Hi, my name is Jake, and I am a bookish drummer. So in this video, I want to talk about my top 10 favorite mystery thriller types of books. Now, normally when I do these types of top 10 lists, and especially when I do genre-related videos, I try to limit myself to only one book per author. But when I did this, I quickly realized that while I've read a lot of mysteries and thrillers, I haven't necessarily read a wide variety of authors. So I originally had a list of 9 books, and I was like, I don't really have another author that I can mention here. So I'm going to kind of pull a mulligan, and I'm going to have 2 Agatha Christie books. One of them is going to be a Hercule Poirot book, my favorite, and then another one is going to be a standalone. So I'm going to go ahead and kick off the video with the 2 Agatha Christie books. The first one I'll mention is her best standalone, at least for me, Crooked House. And it's kind of hard to talk about any of Agatha Christie's books in any kind of detail because they're so short and you don't really want to give anything away when it comes to the reveal. So it's a pretty basic setup, right? You got an old dude, like the grandfather of the family, who mysteriously dies, and you have a list of family members who all kind of inherit, stuff or money because of his death, and you got a guy trying to figure out who really had the real motive and who offed him. What I think is different about this book is that it's just probably her best paced standalone book, and the reveal is just, it's so good. And obviously I'm not going to spoil it at all, but the reveal of whodunit, like, I had an inkling, but then halfway through the book I was like, oh, well, it can't be that person. But then it was that person. And my other Agatha Christie book, which I'll put at my number 9 spot, I guess, is my favorite Hercule Poirot book, and just my favorite Agatha Christie book in general, Appointment with Death. Don't worry about the terrible cover. Usually with a great Agatha Christie book, it needs like great characters, right? And there's great characters, including the victim, because the victim, like, you're reading the book and you do not like this person, and you kind of wish that they would die, and they do. And then you gotta kind of figure out who done it, of course, because it's Agatha Christie. But I also think that just the dialogue in this book is a standout reason why I like the book so much, especially the protagonist of the story, the heroine, I guess you would say. She has some really good back and forth between all of the characters. And of course Poirot is great, as always. I'm just starting to realize now that all of these books are 5 stars, and they're so hard to rank. Oh man. How am I going to do this? I guess I'll start out with the book that's the most fresh in my mind, the book that I've read most recently, and it was a Book of the Month Club pick called The Wife Upstairs by Rachel Hawkins. A lot of the times you'll read like a compelling mystery, but sometimes the protagonist is kind of bland or you don't even like them. With this one, I really enjoyed the protagonist and her kind of attitude and her personality. That was one of the standout parts of this book. And there's a lot going on in this book. There's a lot of different plot threads that weave in and out of the story. And I think the author does a brilliant job of keeping everything coherent and together. And she does a fantastic job of building up the tension, and then when she does reveal things, it's just so good. And this might be like a tiny spoiler. I'm not going to spoil exactly what happens, but just the overall ending of the book is kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? The overall ending of the book is sort of open-ended, where you think you know what happens, but there's a possibility that something else happened. And when an author can pull off a good open-ended ending to a mystery, I'll eat that right up. And for my number 7 pick, this is a 5-star book for me, but the whole book, I was kind of reading it and I was like, you know what, I'll probably give this 3.5, 4 stars. But the ending of the book was incredible, and for that reason alone, it bumped it up to 5 stars. And I'm talking about Behind Her Eyes by Sarah Pinborough. And as far as the ending goes, you're either gonna love it or you're gonna hate it. And I loved it. And like I said, the rest of the book isn't bad. Like, it's good, but I was kind of reading it and I was kind of hoping for like more dramatic stuff to start happening, but it really didn't get good until the very ending. And just, it's an ending that just completely comes out of left field that no one would ever be able to guess. And a lot of people don't like not being able to guess, but I didn't care. It was so good. And my number 6 favorite mystery book of all time is A Simple Favor by Darcy Bell. When I first saw the cover of this book, I was kind of like, is this a book that I'm actually going to like? But then you kind of read the synopsis of the book and you're like, oh, that sounds good. And that's also a great example of how you can write a mystery, but you can also introduce comedic elements and some satire and still have a very compelling mystery to propel the story forward. And the way she writes the book, it's sort of hard to root for either character. Like the villain in this, or like the antagonist, she's just so cunning and, you know, ruthless. But at the same time, the main character is just so dumb. But I had such a blast with this book. It's one of the best mysteries I've ever read. And now we're getting into my top 5 favorite mystery thriller books of all time. And to start off with number 5, Verity by Colleen Hoover. When I looked it up on Goodreads, it said it was more of a romantic thriller, which I'm not opposed to, but that's not what I normally go into books for, is for romance. But when I read the synopsis of the book, I was instantly hooked. It's about a struggling writer who's not doing as good as she wants to be doing, but she lands this gig where she's going to be finishing off the series of this very well-known author in the book. And in order to finish the series that she agreed to finish, she has to go to this person's house and look at her notes for all of her writing that she's done. And when she does that, she stumbles upon her autobiography. And when she starts reading it, she starts realizing there's a lot of messed up stuff going on in her life. And I wasn't really expecting this book to get like really dark, but there's some really unsettling stuff in this book that kind of took me off guard. I was like, whoa. And that's another great example of an author sort of pulling off like an open-ended ending where you're not, she kind of blurs the lines of reality. Like, is it this way or was it actually this way? And whenever an author can do that, especially with a really good mystery, like I said, I just eat that up. And my number 4 favorite mystery, this is kind of like the OG pick, the pick that really just got me into mysteries and thrillers in general, and of course it is Gone Girl by Gillian Flynn. There's not really too much to say about this book. You know, you got the main dude and his wife goes missing. Everyone's trying to figure out what happened to her, and everyone keeps suspecting him as the culprit. And, you know, you get to the big twist in the book, and just everything changes. And I remember reading that for the first time, and my mind was blown. And it's another example of an author not relying on relatable or even characters that you can really root for, because you got the two main characters and they're not great people, but you're so invested in their story that you just want to figure out what is happening and what is going to happen. And for my number 3 favorite mystery thriller book of all time, we have Behind Closed Doors by B.A. Paris. I wouldn't classify this as a mystery. I think it's more just in the thriller camp, because basically the whole time you know exactly what's happening to our main protagonist, and you're just in for the ride trying to figure out how she's going to get out of the situation that she's put in. And just the way that it does happen is just very satisfying, because this probably has like my most hated villain in probably almost any book I've read. I hated the husband in this book, and he needed to be put down. And my second favorite mystery thriller kind of book ever is The Couple Next Door by Cherie Lapina. This is just one of those books where it's just chapter after chapter you get new reveals, and it completely changes everything that you thought you knew about the story. And until you know it, you're up till like 2 a.m. reading the book, and you finish it and you're like, damn. And I love when mystery authors raise the stakes immediately. In the first chapter, you get a couple and they get home and they realize that their baby has been kidnapped. Such high stakes immediately. Some mysteries you start out and you kind of have to get like a couple hundred pages in before you actually realize like what's going on. But with this book, it's right from the get-go. Stolen baby. And like I said, there's so many reveals in this book that it's really hard to predict really anything. And those are, a lot of time, those are my favorite mysteries, where you're along for the ride and you have no idea what's going to happen. And my number 1 favorite mystery thriller book of all time, a book that I would firmly put in my top 10 books of all time, is Then She Was Gone by Lisa Jewell. Lisa Jewell has just become one of my all-time favorite authors. I really want to put her in my top 5 authors of all time, but I've only read 6 of her books, and Agatha Christie, man, I've just read I think like 45 books, so it's hard, but this is better than any Agatha Christie book I've ever read, I can tell you that much. And like with most mystery thriller kind of books, it's really imperative to go into the book not knowing a whole heck of a lot about it. So I don't really want to spoil too much for this book. The main thing I can say is that with Lisa Jewell, you're going to get great atmosphere, you're going to get great character work, and just the way she structures and weaves the story and the mystery together is so satisfying when you read the ending. And the ending is obviously one of the most important aspects of mystery thriller book, because if you get to the end and you're like, well, that was dumb, that's not good. But every time with Lisa Jewell, it's great, and this is my favorite by her. And like I said, my all-time favorite mystery book. So, what did you guys think of my list? Did you like the books? Did you not like the books? What are some of your all-time favorite mystery thriller books? Let me know down in the comments below. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to my channel. Thank you so much for watching, and have a great day.